Okay, folks, I have 10 o'clock. I appreciate you being here. I have several introductions to make, so we can get through those first. How many first-timers do we have here? Never been to a coffee with Peter before? Okay, well, I'm Peter. Who else knows? Yeah, if you haven't figured that out by now, it's going to be tough. Where's Keith? Keith, our president, stand up, Keith. Our president and chairs the executive committee. Steve McManus, where's Steve in the back? He's our VP and chairs the strategic planning committee. I saw Dave Barnum in the back, ARB and board secretary. John Smarsley, covenants committee. Didn't see Rex. Is Christy here? I don't see Christy. Ellen Chen in the back. Put your hand up, Ellen. Chairs the communications committee. Any other board members? Okay. Staff, Todd Lindstrom, our assistant GM, David Mills, our maintenance manager, Trevor Scott, our tennis professional, Larry Kornstadt, our deputy director of security, Tamika Busby. Everybody knows Tamika. Is in the back. She's always got my back. Is Juanica here too? Or? Oh, see, she's got both corners covered. So we're good. Chrissy Christian, Lifestyles, Jen Westerfeld is with her. Sean Ahern is with her. Chrissy's the director, Jen is the assistant director, and Sean is the assistant to the assistant director. And did Michelle pop over? David, is Michelle over there? No, she's not. Okay, she's still over at the POA office. Willette Lee with covenants is here. I think that's everybody. Did I miss a staff member? I always forget Pippi. How many people do we have on Zoom, Pippi?
We have 32.
We have 32 people on Zoom besides this. So, Tom, I need you to give you instructions that you're limited and you're wandering when you're speaking. Yeah, I mean, you just look at the camera. A couple of others. Senator Davis is here. He'll be speaking with us in a little while. Now, this is not a campaign event, and I'm just introducing people, so I don't want anybody to get upset with me. Doug Seifert is here, and Doug is a resident of Hilton Head Plantation. Where's Doug? Stand up. Doug is running for sheriff. Jojo Woodward is also running for sheriff. Equal time. Mark West is running for Congress. He came to visit with us. Mark Smith. I'm sorry. Mark Smith. And I have no idea how many other people are running because there are too many to mention. About 1,500? Yeah. Okay. Mark has met with me. Doug has met with me and spoken to me. I've not spoken to any of the other candidates. They always try to pick my brain. And I don't endorse anybody, but if someone wants information, I share the information about what our goals and objectives are. I'm going to go through this slide deck rather quickly. I'm not going to stop on every slide. I'm just going to punch the highlights. If there's something that I gloss over that you want me to talk about, I'm happy to stop. But every second that you waste your time on me is a second you're not going to get from Senator Davis. I'll just leave it at that. And Pippi always gives me the curtains and all this wonderful stuff, which probably takes more time. You can get this whole deck online. There's one slide that is not in your handout, and I'll tell you about that slide in a second. The Workforce Housing Project has gone out to bid, and as soon as we know which contractor has won the bid, we will let you know and tell you about how that's going on. The Hurricane Guide will be in your June edition of Plantation Living, and the full length will be in Engage. This is the slide that you do not have. And Vanessa Green, who is our Director of Security, and I went to a meeting with Tom Dunn earlier this week to talk about hurricane prep. And this is some of the information, just one of the 54 slides they gave us. Just information, But many of you were dropped out of, your property was dropped out of a flood zone after Hurricane Matthew, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The flood maps are based on pre-Matthew data, for those of you who weren't here in 2016 and witnessed Hurricane Matthew. And homes flooded on Hilton Head Plantation. They did, period. Many mortgage companies, if you are not in the flood zone, will tell you, we're not escrowing your premium for your flood insurance. Buy flood insurance if you're on Hilton Head Island. I mean, I was in that situation. My home was in a flood zone. Now it's out of a flood zone. My mortgage company says, we're no longer, I'm still buying flood insurance. You're very foolish not to buy flood insurance. That's Peter's advice. If you want to volunteer for July 4th, see Jen or Chrissy. We always love volunteers. How many people have experienced the upscale Heritage Porta-Johns down at Dolphin Head? Wow. That was a joint David, Todd, and Peter idea. We're going to have to repair the bathrooms down at Dolphin Head. And in order to do that, we're going to shut them down for a couple of days. So we put those out there. Our fear is you're going to love them. Because they're like the ones where if you went to the Heritage or some high-end event, you know, they're lit, hot and cold running, they're air conditioned, they're not your typical construction porta-john. They're like a real live bathroom. Yes, sir. If you want to leave a tip for Sue or for David, I'm sure they wouldn't object. But it's run off a generator, and between security and David, they're running that. It runs about $3,600 a month to rent that rig. So it's a couple of bucks. We will see what type of traffic we get now that beach has been renourished, and if we get a lot of traffic, I may beg the board to allow us to have that just over the summer months from Memorial Day through Labor Day. Because having folks full of sand traipsing all the way across the parking lot, across the playground, into the rec building when there's a wedding going on or some other special event, probably not ideal. So just so you're aware of that. Wood Hog, which is the Gluckety Gluck machine that makes toothpicks out of your yard waste, is back online, is doing well. It only costs $70,000 to rebuild the engine, but the piece of equipment is worth between $750,000 and $1 million. So a $70,000 invested to increase its useful life is great. We're looking at possibly doing Whooping Crane Way next year, repaving it. And, it's a we'll see. We got one quote so far, and to do it during the day at $1.4 million. And if we do it, I would recommend we do it at night, because last time we did it at night and went much smoother. But it's not going to be an inexpensive operation. E-bike registration is going well. We have over 100 already done. We appreciate it. That Sean, Chrissy, and Jen, put that whole program together, and we really appreciate them doing all that. The last phase of Beach Renourished, where the town came in and fluffed the sand. And they fluffed the sand for a very good reason, because all the heavy equipment compacted the sand. The sea turtles needed something a little softer, so they fluffed it so the sea turtles go on it. Stay off the rocks.
First nest. I just thought people would like to.
Oh, we have a first nest. Oh, cool. We have our first nest. Stay off the rocks, because with the tides, they're still settling in and out, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. This is a public service announcement from your PSD. Use your water responsibly. HAFT, this is the group that's doing the capital improvement assessment, that's looking at this building, looking at the gates, looking at a dog park, looking at pickleball courts, looking at the tennis complex, and what am I missing? I'm leaving something out. Leisure trails. They had their first visit. They're coming back, and they're going to be doing some community engagement. They asked me for dates in July and August to meet with the community and survey you guys. So look forward to that. You have the spring pool party. These are just public service announcement. Bike-a-palooza. This is something that the Covenants Committee, the Lifestyles Committee is working on. just an educational thing. They have lots of sponsors and lots of prizes for children and adults. And it's basically a safety orientation for e-bikes and for bike riders. And there'll be more on that. Okay. How many people have used the Dolphin Head Recreation Building? All right. Have all of you noticed the doors between the hallway and the storeroom? They're beat to crap. And they're 36-inch doors, which is a normal entry door. However, all that equipment coming in and out all the time is just taking its toll. We thought we were going to be able to do an in-house job to widen those doorways. It came in at over $12,000. And we are going to put 42-inch doors there. The board has approved it, and we're setting up a time to do it in the next couple of weeks. So both those doors going into the building from the hallway and from the storage room into the hallway will be widened to 42 inches just to make it easier to get that equipment in and out. Because it's a brand new building, it's a beautiful building, it's the most utilized building, and they love it. So, okay, groceries. Hot topic. Never thought grocery deliveries would be that controversial. Basically, the board talked about this, listened to several ideas, and they decided, just leave it alone. We're going to continue to have people come in without a fee. They're going to get some metrics from the security department at the gates about the number of people that come in with deliveries, the number of unique visits that come in, and then after a 3-month period, they'll evaluate that information and make a decision what to do. So that's where we are. We appreciate everybody's feedback on it. But just so everybody knows, if someone comes in with medication, they're not charged. They're waived in. Pizza, fast food, they're not charged. They're waived in. This was simply groceries. Somebody told me they have a frozen cow that comes once a month, and they wanted it to be waived in. This is what we deal with. We have done about 4 trips, Colette trips, Chrissy? 4, Portugal, Italy, Iceland, Ireland, and they're going to the French Riviera. And very, very popular. We have one bus that's full and a second bus that's almost full. You're interested to see Jen or Chrissy. It's been very, very popular, and I always get lots of compliments. They just do a great job with this. And it actually ends up being a revenue source for us because we get a commission out of it. This is one I want Senator Davis to touch on when he talks. I'm on a committee that monitors state legislation that affects community associations. And this came across my desk and across our committee. And for some reason, the Department of Revenue thought it was a good idea to say to all the community associations in the state of South Carolina that any of your assessment dollars that go towards an amusement, such as tennis, pickleball, playgrounds, pools, we were to separate out the money that your assessment goes toward supporting those amenities and then pay a 5% tax on it to the state. And besides being what I felt was grossly unfair, because we provide all these amenities to you at no cost to the public, and we relieve the public, municipalities and the counties, providing that type of recreation at no cost to them. So Senator Davis, I had written to him, and he wrote to the Department of Revenue, and within a day or two, a note came back, said, never mind. He can talk more about, I don't know how he did the never mind, I don't care, but it came back with never mind. They're only going to tax for-profit community associations. And we are obviously a nonprofit, and most of the ones on the island, I can't think of one that is for-profit. But that was very well done by Senator Davis, and he has helped us out a number of times on a number of permitting issues. throughout his career and my career here. All right, and this is, firearms. You're in South Carolina. You're allowed to carry guns. People have guns in their car. They have guns in their home. Be careful. You are allowed to carry it through common property, but you may not put it on your hip. And in the buildings, you may not walk in with a gun. Those are our rules. But just be aware, that people have guns. And if you own a gun, keep it safe. If you have it in your car, make sure your car is locked. If you have it in your home, if you have youngsters or grandchildren, make sure it's in a safe place and you have a trigger guard on it. Alligators. I've got a couple alligator stories to tell you, and then we'll move on. Security cited a person in the Rookery for feeding an alligator. And somebody got it on videotape. We had a little bit of a controversy about the person didn't want to come forward with the video, but we had the video. We fined them. They went to court and they were fined how much, Tamika? Do you remember? $200 and some odd dollars? And the alligator now has to be removed and euthanized. The other thing is over at the Cypress, and this is just recently, apparently they have a new chef at the Cypress, and the old chef would do barbecues outside next to the lagoon and which throws scraps to an alligator. Well, there's a new chef, and the new chef didn't know this, and the alligator's coming up to him and saying, "Where's mine?" And now we have to call and have that alligator removed because associated, humans with food, and they'll put the alligator down. Don't feed them. Leave them alone.
Your alligator's last meal.
Yeah, I know. And if you see them being harassed or anything like that, you live with coyotes, snakes, armadillos, all sorts of critters. And that's part of the reason why you moved here. It's because of the natural environment. And they're all around us. And this time of year, the security department gets tons and tons of snake calls, alligator calls. They're in my pool, they're at my front door, they're in my backyard. And this is all true. And they come and they move them. And if it's a non-venomous snake, they'll pick it up and they'll put it in some safe place. If it's a venomous snake, they put it down. And that's the way it works. We don't put alligators down that are afraid of humans. We just relocate them, shoo them away. And they're very good at it. Okay, we always do this, and Willette is now providing this information to us. So this was back in February, and you can see the difference. We're down to 1 month worth of inventory, and the price is obviously way up. We continue to be a very, very desirable spot. Continue to be. The beach tree nourishment obviously has even made us even more attractive. A couple of people said to me, "What do you do if you see someone in a boat landing on Pine Island? If you think it's illegal, call security. We'll check it out. Below the mean high water mark, wherever that may be, is state property. We have no jurisdiction. And boating is kind of dangerous in that area because of the tides. If you leave your boat there, you're going to be beached, for a whole tide cycle. So you got to be very careful. But if you think someone is not following the rules, call security and let them know. Someone said, "Well, don't you do regular drone flyover?" No, we don't do regular drone flyovers. Yes, sir. They were barbecuing? I don't think we have a rule against barbecuing on Pine Island. Now, a fire, yeah. I mean, if they were there with some type of barbecue, I don't know. I'll have to look at the rules and see. All right, before I turn the microphone over to Senator Davis, any questions for me? Sir.
On the Hooping Crane repaving, is that included in the capital fund? Is there money set aside or available?
It'll come out of reserves. The board's not going to special assess you for that. we have close to $3 million in that reserve account, another $2.7 million in our weather casualty fund, and the capital fund. You just saw what we've collected so far this year, but we even have more than that. We're probably running close to $2 million in the capital fund right now, if you add in what we have here now. And I didn't introduce our former council member, Glenn Sanford. Glenn, thank you for being here. Yes, ma'am.
What's the responsibility of the POA if somebody on an e-bike hits me and kills me?
Can you repeat the question, Peter?
Well, first of all, God forbid, if they hit you and kill you. If someone on an e-bike hits you and kills you,
Yes, it's me.
it would be the same responsibility of someone on a bicycle. We tell people who have an e-bike that they should talk to their insurance company and get insurance. And that's the extent of it. It would be, it would be adjudicated just like any other accident.
To clarify, not all e-bikes are the same.
Not all e-bikes are the same. There's a class 1, there's a class 2, and class 3s are not allowed on the leisure paths. A class 3 e-bike can go up to 28, 30 miles an hour. And I'm sure if a kid monkeys with it, he can go faster than that. But they are, by state law, they have to be on the road. They're not allowed, which frightens me even more. And, fortunately and unfortunately, these things are here to stay.
Which is why we need to protect ourselves. Before
Well, you need to be very, very conscious of that there are folks, especially kids, on e-bikes. And they have the potential to go, even the class 2s, 20 miles an hour. So, and that's, it's fast.
Do the e-bike rules apply to these electric scooters as well?
Yes, they do. And some resident, I don't know if they're here or not, there are these roller boards that are like a unicycle on a skateboard, and they told security that they're wind up, they're not run by a motor, therefore they're allowed. So it's a duck, and we think it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's not allowed. Pippi?
Question online, would repaving Whooping Crane include a bike walking path, or will that be part of the capital improvement project?
Yeah, they would not put a leisure path next to Whooping Crane. There's not enough right-of-way there, and there are 2 drainage swales on either side. It would just mean the existing path would be improved, or if they come up with something different, maybe they come up with a better idea. Sir?
I'm Craig Gordon, and I'm running for County Council in District 8, but I also chair the Beaufort County Transportation Committee.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's it? If you're not going to give me money, don't say anything. We weren't going to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up now. Todd is working with security on a different system to pay for a vehicle coming in that does not have a decal or does not have the ability to pay and goes to you. We're going to work on a system where the gate officer will call you and say, there is a truck here, it is this many wheels, this is the amount, can we charge you? And we will charge it to your account and send you a bill, period. And that way you don't have to come up to the gate, you don't have to call ahead. If you want to call ahead and pay, you can still do that, but we're going to set up a system of billing. And some of you have your credit card information online, and as long as the officer can make contact with you to say, yes, it's okay, we're going to bill you, okay? And we haven't rolled that out yet, but we have every intention of rolling it out. Am I speaking in tongues, Todd?
Sounds good, except you can't prepay it because they don't know what it's going to be.
Okay. And that's the issue with prepaying. You don't know what size truck it's going to be.
Peter, you put in a new system about 3 years ago, and that was one of the features of the system, was that you would be able to make a phone call and pay as the person came in instead of having to go to what happened. You have to put another system in?
No, it's the same system. We're just using it differently, and it's more efficient to do it that way.
We're going to use our actual accounting system versus that's actually going through API, which is very expensive, by the way.
third party and it just.
They jack up the cost. And they put a surcharge on
We
it.
have to hold all your credit card information in the system.
It'll be easier, believe me.
Like 3 years since that system was supposed to go live.
We've got something that we think will work. Anybody else? Fantastic. One other thing, and I'll tee this up and Senator Davis can expand on it. I sit on a county committee, Beaufort County Committee with Senator Davis, the Green Space Advisory Committee. And Beaufort County proffered a 1% sales tax several years ago to raise $100 million to buy property, to take it off the market, buy down density rights, put conservancy easements on that. And we have bought and recommended to the county council millions and millions of dollars of property to take it offline. This was a bill that was sponsored at the state level that allowed counties to do this. And Senator Davis was the lead on this, his idea. Beaufort County, to my knowledge, and Senator, correct me if I'm wrong, is the only county thus far who's taken advantage of this. We have bought dozens of properties on Hilton Head Island in conjunction with the town. Usually in a cost share, sometimes outright. The most recent recommendation is the property by the Broad Creek Marina that used to have the go-kart track and the ropes course. We recommended to the county council that they partner with the town, $7.4 million apiece, or I think it's $7.7 million apiece, to buy that property, take it off. 151 units, could be 75 feet tall, and there'll be nothing there. It'll be open space. I think you're just going to leave the building for the bathrooms. And for the pickleball aficionados, the place next to that, I think they're looking at putting pickleball courts there. But that was Senator Davis's brainchild. And they're working on a property over on New River, which is close to 5,000 acres of unspoiled timberland, to buy that, to take it off the market as well. So I'll let Senator Davis expand on that, but I wanted to tee that up because this was his brainchild and it's operating very well, and they're using your money very, very consciously on that. So Senator Davis, the floor is yours. Pippi, will Senator Davis still need the mic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one is for Zoom, one is for the audience.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for that, Peter, and great. Back in Hilton Head Plantation again. I think it's been about a year. And so I think I got about a half hour, right, Peter, up until 10 o'clock. And so,
As long as you can mesmerize
so what I'm going to do, I just jotted down 10 things a few minutes ago that I wanted to kind of speed through, give like maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes on each one, which then by my calculation leaves about 10 to 15 minutes where I can answer questions that y'all have. To the extent that I can't get to them during the time allotted, I'll stick around afterwards and kind of answer them directly. But the 10 things I wrote down in my car a few minutes ago that I want to touch on are redistricting, roads and bridges, controlling growth, green space, data centers, energy and the grid, the budget, tax cuts, abortion, and healthcare. Okay, so those are something for everybody, right? So let me start with redistricting, which is something that we typically do in the legislature every 10 years. When there's a census, we figure out how many people are in the state, we figure out where they are in the state. You have to reapportion to make sure each one of our districts has roughly equivalent amount of people. We go through a process that takes a little over a year. Once we get the data, we go around the state, we talk to every community, we talk about what their ideas are in regard to communities of interest, what the line should be. Last time we did this after the 2020 census, we had 10 community meetings throughout the state. Thousands of people came out to be heard. After that, there was a subcommittee process in the Senate where there were 8 subcommittee hearings, very contentious at times, different analyses, different demographic analyses, different statistical analyses. But eventually we arrived upon a map that was then challenged in court by the NAACP because we redrew the lines to make the 1st congressional district more competitive for a Republican, which we're allowed to do. Red states do that for Republicans, blue states do that for Democrats. partisan drawing is part of the mix. And it took us a couple of years, but the U.S. Supreme Court decided in 2024 that we did our maps correctly, that they were constitutional, that they abided by all the constitutional criteria in regard to redistricting. And so those were the maps that we have in place and that Mark Smith and others are currently running under. 20 days ago, we were given a map by the Trump administration that a consultant up there had prepared. Don't know what data he used, don't know what objectives he had, don't know what criteria. He devised the map, and he's done it for some other states as well. And 19 days ago, delivered that map down to us, which redrew the lines completely, and we were told to pass this map. Now, the U.S. Constitution gives this responsibility to the state legislatures for a reason. They wanted the state legislatures to draw the congressional districts. They did not want the federal government to do that. You needed to have that vertical separation of powers. You need to have the sovereign states drafting the district lines that then congressional candidates would run under and then serve in Congress. So that was an important separation of powers. We were asked to pass this map and not to amend any of it, just to go ahead and pass it. And the House did. I mean, the House went ahead and held one subcommittee hearing on it, one committee hearing on it, got on the floor of the House, passed it in 1 day, maybe 2 days, then sent it over to the Senate. And we debated it for the last 5 days and learned some things I just recited to you, but also learned that the person who drew the map, the person, testified by Zoom in a House subcommittee hearing for 7 minutes and 40 seconds about how he drafted the map. Didn't take any questions, and then he had to leave because he has another appointment. That was our legislative record in regard to this map. And by all accounts, even those that were for the redrawing of the maps, this was not constitutional. This had no due diligence. This had no legislative findings. This had no public input. This had none of the things that historically in this country we do when we redistrict. And so we debated it on the floor of the Senate. I made these points. Others made different points. But one of the things that came out was that this map, not surprisingly, had a lot of errors in it. I mean, it had precincts in it that don't exist anymore. If we had passed this map, as we were asked to do, and given it down to local county election boards, there would have been chaos. People wouldn't have known. I mean, it was a bad idea. It was a bad idea for those process reasons. And long story short, a couple days ago, we met and we voted 26-18 to continue the bill, which means that it cannot be considered until sometime next year. And if we want to consider it next year, that's fine if we go through the regular process, but that's redistricting. Second is infrastructure, roads and bridges. I mean, this takes up a whole lot of my time. Primarily for you guys, I want to talk about I-95. We have the funding in place. Contractors have been signed, contracts have been signed, work is underway to widen I-95 to 3 lanes in each direction from the Georgia-South Carolina line, including the bridge, all the way to exit 8. So that process is underway. But what you might not know is we also have the funding lined up for exit 8 all the way to the Walterboro exits for 3 lanes in each direction, north and south. And that once the first leg is done from the Georgia-South Carolina line to exit 8, they'll roll right into doing the remainder. Okay, so we've got that funding in place. There is still, in regard to the exit 8 to Walterboro, there is still right-of-way acquisitions going on, environmental mitigation. I mean, but by the time they're ready to roll over into that segment, we should have all that lined up. So that's all good news. In regard closer to home here on Hilton Head, we've got the funding in place, the engineering is being finalized, and permits should be issued in the next few months. I mean, this takes a while, for a new eastbound bridge from Moss Creek to Windmill Harbor, running parallel to the south of the existing eastbound span. Okay, so you're going to keep the existing eastbound span working and in place while the one parallel to it is being done. So it's not going to be a shutdown and access to the island while the new construction is undergoing. That was all the money that was available given the county money, the infrastructure bank money, and what DOT had available. There was not sufficient money to do the westbound span coming from Windmill Harbor to Moss Creek. So that 3-lane span, we're still working on getting the funding and the engineering for. But importantly, it was the eastbound span that was really the most critical, because it's that first leg coming from Moss Creek eastbound that is the most structurally challenged. Okay, so it's the eastbound that had to be taken care of for structural safety reasons. So that's in place. Okay, that's moving forward. And to their credit, what the town of Hilton Head has done over the last year is they've looked at the piece of 278 from Windmill Harbor to the Cross Island Parkway, because that is going to be the gateway to Hilton Head. That is the first impression that people will have when they come on to the island. And so they've done a fantastic job. And I don't know how many of you have seen the plans, but I know the town of Hilton Head revealed them and they're online. But it is a wonderful balance between facilitating the free flow of traffic, not interfering with existing Gullah neighborhoods, being aesthetically pleasing as well as functional. And it's roughly going to cost, Patsy, $100 to $120 million. Is that about right for the entire thing? And so I'm in the process of putting that package together in terms of town dollars, county dollars, state dollars, federal dollars, how we can put those financial pieces together to make that a reality. And the objective would be to get that all in place concurrently with what they're doing for the bridge coming in. So you could roll right over and do that access route. So that's the 278 piece coming on to Hilton Head. Concurrency. That's a bill that I have drafted, and it got to the floor of the Senate, but it'll be continued till next year. Concurrency is a fancy way of saying that before a developer is given a permit to build homes, there has to be a demonstration that the infrastructure necessary to accommodate that growth is in place. Not planned, but in place. So things like roads and bridges, schools, police, fire protection, things of that nature. The way things are right now, if a developer comes forward and they have a development agreement saying they have a certain number of units that they have a right to build, they present that to the county has to give them a permit, okay? Concurrency would allow the county to say, recognize you have these rights, respect the fact that you have these rights, but you're not going to get a building permit until we have in place the infrastructure that is going to be necessary to accommodate the growth caused by that development. Now, it's important in the concurrency legislation that if you enable a county to do that, or a local government to do that, they have to have in place a plan to address that deficiency over time. Otherwise, it becomes an outright taking. Otherwise, it becomes something that a landowner can bring a lawsuit and say, you've taken my property rights. So it's a careful balance you have to strike between saying, no, we need the infrastructure, and at the same time, not subjecting local governments to lawsuits by landowners for inverse condemnation or regulatory taking. So that is something that I've been working on and hope to get past next year. Related to that is green space, as Peter has talked about. That's legislation that I drafted a few years ago that allows a county to submit to the voters for approval, and it takes voter approval, referendum, to charge a penny sales tax, which in Beaufort County translates to about 35 to 40% from tourists and people coming into the area, for the purpose and sole purpose of taking property off the books from development and putting it in perpetuity into a conservation mode. And you can do that either through outright fee simple purchases, as we've done in many cases. You can do that by buying conservation easements, whereby you buy down the density. So if a developer has a right to build 50 units or 20 acres or whatever it is, you can buy that density down and permanently restrict it. So that's another way to control growth. The reason that's important, and the reason I drafted the legislation a few years ago and got it passed, and then went to county council and convinced them to put it on the ballot, and then went out there to people and urged them to vote for it, which they did, is because I went to the GIS, the mapping up in Beaufort County, and said that if all the development that's been approved, if all the densities that you've already locked down and given to landowners, it comes to fruition, what would that look like for southern Beaufort County? And it more than doubled the number of rooftops. And it seriously would have ruined the quality of life. It would have ruined our environment. I mean, the sort of traffic you see out there right now, imagine if that was doubled. And so there's only so much we can do through building roads to try to facilitate growth or to accommodate growth. There's only so much we can do with concurrency legislation to empower local governments. Sometimes you just need to take the property off the books. Sometimes you just have to go out there and bite the bullet and buy it and say, we need to take this off the books for all these reasons. And so, as Peter said, Beaufort County has been a pioneer in this. We pretty much have spent or have committed almost all the $100 million. And I think that when the case is made as to what we use that money for, people will reauthorize that penny, because I intend to ask County Council in a couple of years to put it back on the ballot. And the reason I served on that Green Space Committee and spent so much diligence is I wanted to build a record to be able to go to people and say, this is what we did with your money and this is the value you got. Because we have to do this at scale. We have to do this next time even larger, in my opinion. So that's Green Space. I'm trying to move quickly because I want to get to questions. Data centers. There has been a proliferation of AI technologies throughout every economic sector. Y'all know this. Whether it's healthcare, financial, whatever it is, every sector of the economy is employing AI technologies. Consonant to that is the need for power, the need for energy, the need for data centers. The data centers are the infrastructure that AI technologies rely upon. And they demand and need an enormous amount of energy. So the demand side is exploding in terms of our energy economics, okay? Our supply is not keeping up. So what do we do about that with data centers? And I filed legislation on this, which got through committee and is on the Senate calendar right now, which says this in regard to data centers. First and foremost, their energy generation needs cannot be subsidized by the grid, cannot be subsidized by other ratepayers. They have to pay for their own enormous power needs themselves. And to their credit, they're willing to do that. The Microsofts and the Amazons and the Googles, they are willing to do that. And so what that means is giving them permission to co-locate on their premises their own energy generation, whether it's a solar farm or a small modular reactor or whatever it might be, but having them build the energy generation on their premises, co-locate it to service, so that way it's not subsidized by the entire grid. Okay, so that means changing the way we have historically gone about meeting power needs in South Carolina, because historically we have said there are 3 utilities, one in the upstate Duke, one in the Midlands, Dominion, which just sold to NextEra, and then in the PD region in Myrtle Beach, you've got Santee Cooper. You have 3 utilities with territorial monopolies. And historically we have said, you are the ones that provide energy to the grid to meet demand. So this is a paradigm shift a little bit by saying that these large hyperscalers, these AI users, having them build their own generation and co-locate it is different from the historical model. And so we've had to work with these utilities, okay, to change the rules to allow that to occur. So that's the first thing we're doing to address the data center problem. The second is they have historically needed a tremendous amount of surface water or groundwater to cool their chips, to cool their systems, which places a tremendous strain on a valuable resource in South Carolina, water, whether it's surface water or groundwater. But new technologies and best practices allow data centers to use a minimum amount of water through closed loop systems. So they take the water, they cool, it evaporates within that closed system, and they reuse the water again. Now it's more expensive, but they can do it. And so we have been working with Google and Microsoft and others, and they have agreed to incorporate these best practices into their data center generation to address the drain on that precious resource. The third thing is noise and vibration, okay? They can be tremendously disruptive to nearby communities. And so that follows into my next point, is we have to require, similar to best practices in regard to use of water, we have to require noise and vibration attenuation to be built into their structures, okay? And again, they can do it. They can do it. It's more expensive, but they can do it. The fourth thing in regard to data centers is, aside from all those 3 things, they have to be appropriately located. They can't be put in environmentally sensitive areas like the East Basin or places like that. There has to be a menu of places that we've looked at and say, these are places in South Carolina where we think data centers can be located in a way that is environmentally appropriate. And a lot of those places are brownfield sites. I mean, sites that have been, former industrial sites that have not been cleaned up. So trying to incentivize them to go into those areas, okay, and to clean up the problems that are there, and they're already adjacent to existing, transmission lines. So those are the things we can do in regard to data centers to make sure that they're not impacting quality of life for South Carolinians. Next is in regard, well, I talked about energy, but I'll touch upon this. Many of you will recall that, well, first of all, let me say this. About 50% of our power in South Carolina is nuclear generated. I mean, that is more than any other state. And we sought to capitalize and build on that back in 2010 by saying we were going to build 2 new nuclear reactors at VC Summer Nuclear Site just north of Columbia in Jenkinsville. And that was a joint venture between, at that time, SCE&G and Santee Cooper to build these 2 nuclear reactors and AP1000 Westinghouse design, which is a very good design. But we were the first ones to do it, so there was a lot of bugs in it. Long story short, after spending about $10 billion, SCE&G and Santee Cooper pulled the plug and said, we can't complete this, and left it on site. One of them complete about 50% complete, the other about 35% complete. And that was back in 2016. They pulled the plug. There were a lot of people the following year in 2017 that wanted to sell the stuff on site for parts, scrap it. I mean, sell it to Georgia. That was also building some nuclear reactors. I filed the bill and eventually got my colleagues to agree that we should keep all of that in good condition. We should keep it on the ground in good condition in case economic conditions ever changed that made it economically viable to complete those units. And guess what? The economic conditions did change because the demand side of the equation exploded. You had these companies, these AI companies that are desperate for power. And so as a consequence, I filed legislation that was passed that directed Santee Cooper, which ended up being the owner of what's on site out there, to issue RFPs to the private sector to solicit bids to use private money at private risk to complete those reactors, and also to spend money to buy them to provide relief to ratepayers that still have that cost, that $10 billion cost sunk into their rate base. And so they got a successful bidder. Brookfield is a equity firm out of New York City. They've agreed to spend the approximately $20 billion to complete the units. They've agreed to pay about $3 billion to Santee Cooper so Santee Cooper could take it off ratepayers' base, which also translates to co-ops because co-ops buy their power from Santee Cooper. And then at the end of the day, 25% of that completed asset is going to be owned by Santee Cooper, and they can make that power available to their customers at cost. It is a tremendous deal for South Carolina that we would not have gotten if we had simply sold those things off for parts. And so we can turn this thing around, and I'm really excited about how that turned out. In regard to the budget, I'm on the Budget Conference Committee. There are 3 senators that are appointed and 3 House members that get together to reconcile the different versions of the $15 billion state budget that was passed. Senate has a version, House has a version. I'll go up Monday and begin to go through those thousands of lines, line by line, to try to reconcile what the House did and what the Senate did. One thing for sure it's going to include is between $600 to $900 million of additional relief, tax relief, in the form of income tax reduction. And importantly, if the Senate version of the bill prevails, an increase of the homestead exemption for those 65 and older from $50,000 to $150,000. So the first $150,000 of your property tax, of your assessed value, would not be subject to tax, which is approximately a $350 million recurring financial obligation to the state, because the state has to go ahead and reimburse the counties for having to forgo that revenue. I'm hopeful we can get that passed. I realize that the House has their version of a tax cut that they want to see passed in regard to small businesses, which is also an important tax cut as well. But the point I want to make is that South Carolina is doing extraordinarily well in terms of economic growth and revenues coming in, and we are doing the best we can to get as much of that revenue back to people as we can, because I believe, and many of my colleagues believe, that money is most productive in the private sector and yields better outcomes than if it's spent by government. That's something that I believe, and that's what's animating this particular budget priority that I have. Abortion. It wouldn't be a General Assembly session if we didn't have something to do with abortion. But the Medical Affairs Committee in the Senate about a month and a half ago passed out a new abortion bill that would have banned all abortions from the moment of conception. It would have eliminated the exceptions that we currently have for rape and incest. It would have required a woman who is pregnant, whose unborn child has been diagnosed with a fatal fetal anomaly, meaning they don't have a heart or brain or something necessary to survive outside the womb. The bill would require them to carry that baby to term in any event. Imposed a 20-year felony prison sentence on doctors and anybody at the doctor's office that was involved in an abortion, and also subjected the woman herself to 2 years in prison. I spoke out against that. I blocked that bill. I'll continue to block that bill. They probably they'll take another run at it next year, and they may have the votes. If they do, I'll stand in the well and I'll filibuster it, which requires them to come up with 26 votes to sit me down. I did that a few years ago when they tried this. This is not any disrespect for people who hate abortions. I don't like abortions. No one likes abortions. But the way I've always approached this is you've got two competing rights. On the one hand, you have the woman and her right to sovereignty over her body, her right with her doctor to make medical decisions. Okay, and that you have that right. And then on the other hand, you have the right of the unborn child in society to see that unborn child be born. And I've always looked at it as being a continuum along 9 months, and that at the very beginning of that continuum, the right of the woman takes precedence, but as you move along that 9 months and get into 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, that the right of the state and to protect that unborn child takes control. That's how I've approached it. I don't have a franchise on the truth here. There are passionate people with good reasons on either side of this. The best that I can do as your elected official is explain to you clearly how I look at it and how I go about casting a vote on your behalf up in Columbia. And I say that with all due respect, and I know that a lot of people disagree with me on both the left and the right in that regard. So last topic is healthcare. We're seeing a lot of really good capital investment in regard to healthcare coming to Beaufort County. You see Novant investing a lot of money. You see Beaufort Memorial investing a lot of money. You're going to see MUSC come in here and hospitals and providing healthcare access. That is in large part to the work that this man right here did, Mark Smith, in terms of opening up capital expenditures to private sector. We used to have something in South Carolina called certificate of need. So you had to go get permission from the government agency in order to build something to provide healthcare access. And when you make that application, existing healthcare providers could object. They could say that we're already down here, we can do that. And so they successfully prevented capital investment because they would tie things up in court many times for 10 years and people just gave up. We repealed that, okay, and Mark played a big role in this. We repealed that, and as a consequence, you're seeing tens of millions of dollars coming into this area and providing healthcare access that wasn't there before. And that is something that I am focused on. That's the capital expenditure side, but we also have to focus on the personnel side. Every single provider, especially non-MD providers, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, certified medical assistants, they all have to practice to their full scope of competency. You can't restrict them in regard to what they're trained to do. And in South Carolina, we still have work to do in terms of allowing them to do all the things that they're taught in school to do. Now, and it's called scope of practice, that's what it falls under. Nobody wants these non-MD professionals to do things beyond their scope of competency. But conversely, you want all of them to be able to provide all those services to their full scope of competency, because in a lot of these rural areas in particular, they don't have doctors. I mean, doctors aren't there. Nurse practitioners and physician's assistants are the first line of healthcare access for those communities. So I've been focusing on that for the past several years. There's considerably more work to do in that regard. So those are the 10 topics. Did I get it in under 25 minutes? I did. And so I'll answer any questions that everybody has.
I need to interrupt the senator for one oversight on my part. I did not introduce Patsy Bryson, who's one of our council members. Patsy.
Patsy, take a bow.
Kristen Graham in the back chairs our Lifestyles Committee. She's on the board of directors. I'm sorry, no, Security Committee. She switched.
Okay.
She switched. She absconded.
Okay. Any questions anybody has? Peter, you call them because I get people mad when I don't do it.
Go.
Right.
Yes, Tom, you sponsored Senate Bill 49 a couple terms ago, which was a transfer on death statute, so that we would, as homeowners, be able to transfer our real estate very simply by a simple deed at death, rather than having to go through the expense and trouble of a trust. That Senate bill it went to judiciary and just sat there. I tried to contact you to find out what's going on, what happened, can you do anything? I think it's just died a natural death. What's your position? Will you pursue that further? Or
Yes.
dead situation?
Yes. The idea there is it's very similar to the way a lot of you may already hold title as joint tenant survivorship, so that upon the death of one of the individuals, it passes outside the probate process to the surviving person. So this would broaden that and provide more flexibility in regard to that. Which I do support. To answer your first question is I'm still pushing it. Why is it being held up? Is because anything that has to do with the law, okay, the South Carolina Bar has to weigh in. The South Carolina Bar has an estate and probate section, okay, which has been, quote, examining this bill and has been critical of this bill. And if I'm being cynical, I could say it's because they take business away from them. But I think that as with anything, something that's a good idea, which this is ultimately going to prevail, even though you have a well-funded and respected opposition to it. So, to be honest with you, I'll file it again next year. Whether or not it gets through the judiciary process and on the floor of the Senate, I can't promise you that, but I can promise you that I will continue agitating to move it through the process. And I'll also work with the South Carolina Bar, and especially the Estates and Probate section, to bring them along and say, look, there's still lots of estate planning for you to do. There's still lots of things that you can do here, but give people a break in regard to this simple change. So that's the best I can do to answer you, sir.
Most states have it. South
They do.
Carolina does not.
They do. Yes, sir. Peter?
Yeah, there was a gal that had her hand up. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah,
Loud.
Are there any data centers in the planning process or approved for South Carolina yet?
The question is, are there any data centers that are queuing up? And the answer is yes. I mean, throughout the state. And that's one of the reasons for urgency here, because there is a lack of bargaining power between the data centers and the amount of money they have and local governments, which right now are the only gatekeepers in regard to where they're located and what the best practices in regard to building them are. We need to provide them with assistance. We need to lay down at the state level these guardrails, because we've seen, unfortunately, in Colleton County, they had initially approved a data center to be near the Ace Basin. And the reason for that is these data centers generate a lot of property tax dollars for a lot of these areas that don't have the property taxes. So we need to step in and recognize that there's an unequal bargaining position there, and that local governments can't police them in a way that we need to have them police. So that's why this data center legislation that I prepared is so essential. Yes, ma'am. And they're going to keep coming because they're going to keep coming because AI technologies are permeating every sector of the economy, and they need the data centers to support them. So simple supply and demand, you're going to see them keep coming.
Are they going to Colleton County? Is there one approved in California?
No, that was pushed back on, and it got relocated to further inland.
This gentleman here and then the gentleman in the back.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
Tom, I moved here from Loudoun County, Virginia.
Oh my God.
I live.
My sympathy.
No. I lived in Ashburn, Virginia. I strongly suggest that you folks go up there and see what
Data centers.
They destroyed everything. It was once, known as farmland, horses. It's destroyed.
Yeah, Northern Virginia is sort of the poster child for that. And
And they con the citizens by saying, we're going to reduce your taxes. It's a lie. And not only that, everyone gets bought into it. There's big money behind this.
Tremendous amount of
money. The last point, have you ever considered a toll road on that bridge?
on the Hilton Head Bridge?
Yeah.
There was a toll road we had on the Cross Island Parkway for a while. And I believe that would take both DOT and the town of Hilton Head's concurrence. So, not to punt to Patsy and the town council, but if the town council decided that that was a mechanism whereby they wanted to finance a lot of these improvements, I mean, I'm your representative up there, and I would then go to Justin Powell, who's the DOT secretary, and facilitate that for you. But let me tell you something that we have done that just passed this session. Currently, right now, Beaufort County has the right to do penny sales taxes for capital improvements. The legislation that we got passed this year gives that right to municipalities. Okay, so a municipality at a general election can ask for a penny for up to 8 years to pay for their road projects. The stipulation is that 20% of the money that's raised, if they do that, has to be used for a tax credit to reduce property taxes for people on the island. To me, that's a good vehicle to look at if the county referendum does not pass. It's also a mechanism whereby you can have tourists start to pay for some of this infrastructure growth and also provide you with 20% credit against your property taxes. Look, when we start putting together the financial building blocks to make these things a reality, you got to look at things. You got to look at tax increment financing districts. You got to look at economic opportunity zones. You have to look at the federal, DOT dollars, Department of Transportation money, state money, county money, tolls. I mean, it's all hands on deck. You have all options on the table because at the end of the day, you've got certain capital needs, and you got to figure out how you're going to pay for them. And so, if you're going to do that, you have to have an honest conversation, and that needs to be on the table as well.
Gentlemen, right here.
Given that South Carolina ranks 43rd in educational rankings among states in 2022, and we have the famous corridor of shame on I-95 of underfunded school districts, what is the state legislature doing to improve educational opportunity and ranking?
Yeah, and that's a true statistic, but it's also 4 spots better than we were a few years ago, and it's primarily because what we've done in the General Assembly is we've recognized that the most important expenditure dollars, the best yield on your money, is to get a quality teacher in that classroom. And you're not going to get a quality teacher in that classroom until you pay them a salary commensurate with what's needed to get them there, because otherwise they're going to go someplace else. And so we have, over the last 5 or 6 years, raised the starting salary and also the continuing salary to above the Southeast average. We're going to continue to do that. We're not just giving money to districts anymore and block dollars. We're saying these monies are going to be used to raise teacher salaries because that's what makes a difference, is that teacher in that classroom. And so what we can do is continue to do that, continue to up those salaries to get a quality person in that classroom. And that is the thing that's going to drive, I think, that 43 number in the right direction. So that's what we've been doing. And we have been spending, I would say, aside from roads and bridges, education, K through 12, those are the 2 top priorities we have in South Carolina, our infrastructure and K through 12 public education.
Look at what Mississippi has done to improve its rankings.
And they have, and what they've done is twofold, and we've done too. They have addressed that teacher situation I'm talking about, and they've also made K4, get them in the classroom earlier, which we have as well. And I would be supportive of moving that to even 3. Okay, because the earlier you get them in the classroom, the more they start learning, the better you're going to have the outcomes, combined with better teachers in the classroom. Yes, sir.
Oh, we're in the back right there.
Why has there been no effort or incentive to bring natural gas to this island? Because we are literally one electrical catastrophe away from having to evacuate the entire island.
Well, we are getting a new pipeline, okay, coming up through South Carolina, Georgia line, all the way into the Walterboro area to bring in an abundance of natural gas. We're expanding the pipes. We're bringing it to the state. So to answer your first question is the supply is going to be there. The second thing would be you have to look at the utility that has jurisdiction in your area. And this is what you've got. Pembina Electric is mostly, which is a co-op, and they get most of their power from Santee Cooper. So getting that gas to the island is going to be a decision made by the co-op, okay? And they should, if they're responding in a responsible way, they should respond to the demand that's being expressed, okay? Because they're going to have to charge, for that line, and that's going to go into your bill, okay? They're going to cover that capital cost. So that's how it can happen, is if Pembina Electric is persuaded that enough of its customers want it to justify the extra expense that's going to be on the bill to build that infrastructure to get it here.
Okay, Pippi has one online, and there will be one other question, and I'm sure the senator will stay after.
Yeah, I'll stick around.
Talk to you individually. What do you have?
So the question from online, is there a timeline for the Highway 95 construction? Is the project on the schedule?
Yes, the timeline for, from the Sacramento, Georgia line, which includes the bridge, to exit 8, the timeline was 4.5 years, okay? That began about 6 months ago. So you're talking about completion within a 4-year period. Yes, it's on the proper timeline. And again, to say what I did earlier is, the plan is that once that is done, they can just simply roll into the next segments all the way up to the Walterboro exit. So that's, and we've got the money lined up for that. Let me say that, and that was no mean feat. Our delegation worked hard to get that money, set aside and escrowed for that. So yes, we are on budget, on time, and it's going to take a while, 4 years, and then we're going to roll into the next segments.
Okay, sir, all the way in the back.
Following up on the roads and bridges, it looks like the 3 lanes from Moss Creek to the expressway look pretty good. What about the reverse getting off the island where we have the huge backup trying to merge to get across the bridge? And what about Squire Pope intersection?
Obviously, the second one first. The Squire Pope intersection and all of those pieces of infrastructure between Windmill Harbor and the Cross Island are part of that Hilton Head Gateway Master Plan, which involves overpasses. I encourage you to look on the town of Hilton Head site to look at that, because I think it's a brilliant plan, and I think it's aesthetically pleasing, and I think it's functionally, very efficient. To your first question in regard to the westbound span coming off the island, we know the location is going to be to the north of the existing span, because again, once you're constructing it, you want the existing one to be in place. You don't want it to be shut down during the process. To be frank with you, we need to put the money together for it. It's going to be about $250 to $300 million. And we've got to look at local resources, whether it's in regard to tax increment financing or sales tax. You look at county resources. You got to look at state DOT dollars. You look at federal dollars. So again, the first step is to identify what you want, and we want that 3 lanes, parallel to the existing one westbound. You have to bid it out and figure out what the cost is, and then you got to put together the financial building blocks. And so it's going to involve all those things: town, county, state, federal, perhaps by referendum. In terms of urgency, the useful life on that westbound span is about 15 to 20 years. Okay, so it's newer than the eastbound span. But to your point, it's 2 lanes. It needs to be 3. So it remains a priority of mine to get the dollars in place. I'll do the best I can to line up those different pieces of funding to get it done. I can't give you a specific timeline. I don't know.
If you look in the May edition of Plantation Living, at the end of my column, there's a QR code that put there. And if you hit that QR code, it would give you the town's website and the whole corridor between Windmill Harbor and Spanish Falls Road in detail. It tells you everything that you want to know with pictures, arrows, and so on and so on. It's very well done, and I'm sure there'll be comments on it, but it's a good shot. But that's there. I want to thank Senator Davis. Obviously, this is a guy who just knows his stuff. We are adjourned. Great job, Tom. Thank you.